Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar. Today we're going to talk about fun with Jolly Phonics, and of course we're going to talk about how to give your kids a flying start, especially this year, so when we're very excited to go back to the classroom. My name is Svetlana Golubeva and I'm Jolly Phonics and Jolly Grammar Trainer. So if you have any questions, please email me or join one of our social sites, please. So today we're going to talk about a whole reading approach, traditional versus synthetic. So we're going to talk about 5 basic skills of Jolly Phonics. So we're going to talk how to make fun while learning, and at the end of the webinar you will have some time to ask me the questions. All right, to start with, I would like to ask you, what age do we teach reading? Yes, you're absolutely right. So we start teach at the age of 5 approximately. And of course, the first and the second language acquisition doesn't happen the same. So the first language, so when we learn our first native language, our parents help us. Parents teach us how to read. They speak to us all the time. They ask us to repeat the words. So that's how we acquire the first language. But when it comes to the second language, so it is time for the teachers to teach the language, and in a way we somehow have to replace parents because we are going to teach them the language, so we'll have to talk to them in this language. So we will tell them the stories, we'll read the books, and of course we're going to be very patient. The whole reading approach was very popular all over the world. So when we used to teach English language this way, if you open any course books, in the past you could see all the texts, and there would be a CD or track that teachers would put on, and with perfect English pronunciation you can hear the whole text. Then the homework would be to read at home. And of course, if some children are lucky, if their parents speak English language, or for example, if they have tutors, they would help them. So here I showed you an example. I hope you cannot understand what is written here, but that's how children see the text. So they can see all these letters which you can't even recognize. You don't even know what are these words. So they look funny. And of course, when we ask them to read, so in a way, we try them to retell this recording, to retell something that they heard from a teacher. And I remember in the past when I was teaching Russian students, some of them were even writing on top of English letters, they were writing Russian words in English, so that they couldn't read. They were writing them in Russian because Russian would help them to read. And some teachers will even give homework to translate the text, which is, again, you shouldn't be doing if you're teaching English, because you should concentrate on English language, not on your native language. And it's really hard job to be a translator, of course. So children in your class should be, of course, they should listen a lot of English language, and if you want to teach them reading, they can actually read, not just memorize. Because children, 80% of children, they do not have a good memory. Unfortunately, they are not able to memorize the whole text. And in the past, we used to give them cards to learn. Again, I hope you can't read the language here. And we were trying to associate the words. For example, if we look at this picture, oh, this looks like a tail. Oh, that's a dog, because a dog has got a tail. So we were showing them the card, and we were repeating and again, look, dog, dog, dog. We were showing the picture of the dog, and we were showing them the word dog, and we were thinking the children were reading. And some teachers, they even labeled the classroom, so they would put the label blackboard, wall, desk. And again, this is not reading, this is just memorizing. And as a result, not all kids would succeed, because it's really hard to memorize the word. And maybe you notice in September, you give them this dictation, you ask them to read the words, then maybe end of the year, they can't remember the words. And of course, we want to make sure that our children are all succeed. Teaching of reading, the head of department identified in 1996 that the problems experienced by poor readers were, they were just guessing words, not decoding them. Because if you want to read the word cat, so you read cat, cat. So that's how you read it, you decode it. There's weak knowledge of letter sounds, and that is true. If you open the majority of course books, there's only little things you can find there, only a few maybe exercise on pronunciation, decoding, or letter sounds. So there's not enough in the books, and they have poor ability to hear the sounds in the words. And of course, if we talk about critical period, for example, so the time of puberty, you know that it is true that it is harder sometimes to teach older kids or adults, because it's hard for them to hear the sounds. But while the kids are still young, so they can clearly hear the sounds, and we should teach them the skill of recognizing the sounds. Because if you want to write, if you want to improve your spelling, you need to hear the sounds to be able to write the word. For example, if you want to write the word cat, cat, cat. The problems, they are linked to the whole word memorizing. And as I mentioned before, it's extremely difficult, especially with for children who have poor memory. And it disadvantages boys, children from poor environment, children with special needs, and non-English speaking children. So the research in 1960, look and say method were widespread in the English-speaking countries. It seems to enable children to make good initial progress. But important things happened, two important changes of the method happened in 1980s. And when the whole word memorizing changed to learning letter sounds and blending them, and actively teaching children to hear and identifying the sounds in the words. Traditionally, we teach them alphabet, A, B, C, D. A, apple. Why is it apple, not apple? B, ball. That's fine. C, cat. Why is it cat, not sat? We teach alphabet when we teach children reading. But do they actually need the alphabet to be able to read? If we want to read the word cat, so we are not going to use the letter names. We're not going to say C-A-T, because C-A-T is not cat. We need alphabet a little bit later, when children will open dictionaries, for example, to read the definition, to find the word, or maybe they need to spell their name or surname, which will come a little bit later. We don't need alphabet to teach reading. In synthetic phonics, we start with sounds, letter sounds. We're going to decode them, and children are going to work out the words together. For example, if you want to read the word rain, R-A-N, rain. Instead of memorizing the word rain, if we teach them the code, life seems to be much, much better. Synthetic phonics is the new way of teaching reading and writing. And some people think that Jolly Phonics is just for reading, but no, Jolly Phonics covers all the skills, all productive and receptive skills. So there's a reading, writing, speaking, listening. There are plenty and plenty of things that you can do. Now I'm just going to mention just a little bit about 5 basic skills of Jolly Phonics. So we're going to start with the letter sounds. So moving on to letter formation, blending, identifying sounds in words and tricky words. First of all, I would like to mention that English language has 56 sounds written in 159 different ways, and it is really, really hard. Can you imagine to teach all these 559 different ways? But of course, we're not going to say, okay, children, here 159 different ways. We're going to start with the easy sounds, all right? So for example, let's have a look at sound A. In sound A, for example, we have A like in the word rain, frail. A like in the word lay, play. A like date, name. A like apron. A like faint. A like they. A like eight. A ballet. A great and A straight. So there are different ways, 10 different ways of writing the sound A. And of course, we're not going to teach all 10 ways of writing A. We're going to start with the main sound, so which we are going to introduce in pupil book number 1. So where we have the main 42 sounds, like the foundation. We're going to start with this main sound, A, and then move on to our pupil book number 2 and 3, where we're going to introduce alternatives. We are going to teach A at the end of the word and A split digraph, jump away, hop away, as in the word date. Later, we're going to move on to grammar book number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and later we're going to introduce all the rest, because otherwise it's going to be too much. So we're going to introduce the most popular ones, the main sound with alternatives, and move on to more rare ones. Letter sounds. So the basic, the foundation is there are 42 main sounds, and we're going to start with very easy ones, at, it. And we move on to digraphs. Digraphs, there are 2 letters, but we put them together, they make one sound, like A, O, I. And we're going to start with a story. So when we're going to start with a story, we can either tell them a story, because you can find them in your teacher's book. You can use this wonderful puppet, for example, as a snake to show, because we're going to show the action. So we're going to tell the story and show the action. And there's a story about the boy going for a walk, and he can see a snake, and the snake hisses and says, and then if you don't want to tell the story, or some teachers are very, very shy, if you use your interactive whiteboard, you can always press the button and your children can hear the story. Now you're going to talk about different things here. So we're going to start with the story. We introduce action. Later we're going to sing some songs, so which are also great fun. And move on to letter formation. And of course, if you teach in international school, you can use workbooks to help you. And because generally Russian language, Russian letter formation and English, it's very, very similar. So sometimes teachers use them as a homework. So, but if your children are old enough and they're quite confident writers, so then using workbooks is not important. So, but what is important when you use workbooks, so it's really important to use all of them with pupil book number 1 as all 7 workbooks, they cover 7 group of sounds. So it's up to you to decide. So if you're going to work on letter formation a lot, or your children can easily do it. You can also use activity books with plenty of stickers and lots of fun, interesting activities, and they can also be as home resources. You can use either phonics handbook if you teach young children, 2, 3, 4 years old. You can simply photocopy it, and if they're still not confident writers, so you can put some pluses in, so you can put some pasta, eggshell, or they can start drawing a little bit here with younger children, and of course with older children, so you can use pupil book number 1, 2, and 3. Later, there's plenty of posters that you can put on the wall. For example, this is the letter order. The poster is a reminder for children that there's an action, as you can see for there's a snake as a reminder for the action, so that they can remember later. There are lots of interesting posters that you can use in your classroom. For blending and segmenting activities, it's really important to use cards in the class. So there are plenty of games that they can use. You can get lots of ideas if you join one of our training. We move on to tricky words, and tricky words, they are something that we cannot teach all the complicated rules now. They're too difficult. But we need those words because we want to boost our independent writing. For example, with the word was, w-o-z, but we need to write A in the middle. So only later we will find out that actually W-A makes the sound O, but we don't want to teach them all the rules now. It's easy to use them as tricky words, and tricky words, there's a magic, you know, they live in these big hat. So you take them out, and the word, we're going to read this word differently now. As soon as your children are very confident and they know all the sounds, you can start reading. And independent readers, they're great help for you, because those readers, they're designed for children. You don't need to translate anything there, because they can understand what's happening in the pictures, because the pictures, they help us to understand what is in the story. And there are plenty of readers. So we start with orange readers. They're very small decodable words there. And we move on to longer and more complicated stories. And at this time, children will get plenty of words and vocabulary very, very close to native speaker. As you can see, this is the example of independent writing. That is typical what you're going to get with your kids. So I made lots of cakes, and one cake was burned. I watched Thumbelina and I had some popcorn. That is Jessica. Jessica is 5 years old. And here you have to be really, really careful so that you do not correct everything. So we cannot correct every single mistake, and we cannot teach them everything. So be careful. If you start correcting, this can discourage them from independent writing. And remember when you were a kid, so when you were writing in your native language, so you were making plenty of mistakes at that time of the age of 5. So don't worry. So the spelling will come slowly. Making fun is really, really important. Jolly Phonics is a multisensory program. So we've got lots of stories. There are actions, sounds, there are plenty of colorful visual pictures. And of course, it's tactile. So it's all called multisensory. The first research that was conducted where Jolly Phonics was compared with the previously used method, and 9 schools were participating. And here, as you can see, this is the result of the research. So a 7-year study showed that in reading, the children were 3.6 years ahead of chronological age. spelling, they were 1.9 years ahead of chronological age. And boys reading 9.5 months ahead of girls. And boys spelling 8.5 months ahead of girls. Can you imagine the boys can be even better? So actually, some people say that boys are generally better at maths than girls, and that when they decode the things, if you teach them the code, it's easy for them to decode that how it works. So your boys are not going to fall behind, so they're going to be the stars. You can read there plenty of studies from around the world, and of course proving Jolly Phonics being a really successful program, loved by kids and teachers alike. But it's really, really important to get the right balance between materials and training. There are plenty of materials, so some teachers even say that this time is not enough for the lesson. If you teach 5 minutes or 25 or 45 minutes, there's plenty of things you can do. There are plenty of activities that are suitable for everyone. And it is also really important to have training so that you can get lots of ideas how to make fun in your classroom. And if you join one our training, so you can learn how to teach in the classroom and how to use these ideas while teaching online. So my conclusion is teaching English needs to use a method suitable for young children. So teaching needs to be multisensory for young children. So we need to teach letter sounds, teach the code so that they can work out the new things, new words themselves. That's why it's really important to use Jolly Phonics. And we provide plenty of support for teachers. So we provide teacher trainings, teacher consultations, head teachers consultations, school support, and much, much more. So to find out more, you can send us an email, or you can follow us in social media, or go to our site to find out. I hope you all enjoyed and you get plenty of new ideas for the new coming year. And now it's time to answer your questions.